I think the only way this ends is at some point Putin is no longer the president of Russia. If that doesn't happen, then there's always going to be some level of conflict at this area. Can we do this? Can we all three have predictions? Actually, all five of us. Can we do predictions?
Oh, what you think's going to happen?
Yeah, I think because in a debate like this is different from the other ones. In this, there is a unique chance for us to be extremely right. So what do you have a prediction, Walt?
Yeah, I do actually. I think, personally speaking, Russia did what they had to do by going into Ukraine.
I agree with that.
However, at the same time, like what they did is they caused an issue because now NATO's going to be all on their necks.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually they either got to surrender or become part of NATO. And at that point, they're not going to surrender. So
and they've been offered to join NATO before. I think during the Yeltsin administration, they did, and they declined.
They don't want to. So I think at this point where it's going, if they don't win, they're going to have to surrender.
What do you think, Stephen?
I don't see Russia making any more significant gains in territory. Dawson is right in that the grind on the Ukrainian side is a grind right now.
For sure, they have fewer people.
Yeah, and that the it's a war measured in meters and not miles in terms of captured ground. Again, from the military analysis I've seen, it seems like whether or not Ukraine can retake significant territory is going to come down to whether or not they have the personnel and they've got the supplies and they have the micromanagement. Right now, they have a really hard time macro managing all of their different forces together. That the Ukrainians don't have that wide scale discipline and training yet to be able to deploy all of these different weapon systems and then make them work in a unified combat sense. Assuming that they continue to improve there, they have an unlimited purse from the West. They probably have an unlimited desire in their citizens, because I think Ukrainians want to fight to defend Ukraine probably more than Russians want to fight to do whatever they're doing in Ukraine. So I think that I feel like in a year from now, we'll have a pretty clear picture of what the time horizon is on Ukraine's victory. And I think a victory for Ukraine at the least includes recapturing the Donbass. I don't know about Crimea. I have a hard time believing they'll get that back, but who knows?
Myron, what do you think? Who do you think? What do you predict? A year, 5 years?
I think Russia's going to hold what they got, and pretty much Ukraine's going to be cut in half.
Oh, well, not half. I mean, you can.
I mean, yeah,
Chris, if you can show
roughly like
it's like 15%.
The entire eastern part of Ukraine will belong to Russia.
Chris, if you can show that map, I think, so that people could have an understanding.
I think they're decisively winning the war slowly but surely, and I think that at this point, Ukraine isn't going to be able to regain the lost ground, from the east.
Just so you guys see, that is before the war, and then there's the initial invasion. You see all the Sumy and Kharkiv have been taken by the Russians, and then this is the counteroffensive down there in the bottom left. So Kharkiv and Kherson have been taken back by Ukraine, and then this is where we are currently, right there with Bakhmut being taken by the Russians, and Mariupol is like far. A lot of people talk about the Mariupol thing. Mariupol is far inside of Russian territory, Russian taken territory.
I don't think Kharkiv was taken. It was surrounded. Sumy was taken. Kharkiv was never in Russian.
There was a commander in the Russian forces who put out an evacuation order. That's all I know. So again, we have the fog of war, but I've read a report that it was actually
and then
taken.
You guys give your predictions that we're going to switch over to 9/11.
What is your prediction?
Oh, I think they'll hold the Donbass. They'll take Lyman. They may push up to the Dnieper. They're not interested in Western Ukraine. And Ukraine's going to run out of personnel. I don't think the F-16 is going to be a game changer. I don't think the Ukrainian counteroffensive or offensive has been successful at all. They're getting wiped out. They could sharpen their discipline and be better at hybrid warfare, but Russian artillery has proven to be the king of the battlefield, and Ukraine doesn't have an answer for it.
All right.
Yeah, I think Ukraine is going to have an answer for artillery. I think they're going to have just as many pieces as the Russians are. My whole issue is this. I think the only way this ends is at some point Putin is no longer the president of Russia. If that doesn't happen, then there's always going to be some level of conflict at this area.
If he was taken out, it would change everything.
There you go. So I think there's a high probability that they do things. They have what's called a Russian election where they push you out of a 4th-floor window. I think and I'm not hoping death on anybody, but if he leaves the country, if he goes somewhere else, I think what happens is the cost of this war and the unpopularity of it in Russia, immediately whoever the new leader is starts to secede certain areas of Donbass. Crimea, you're right, that has way more to do with their hold over the Black Sea, but I also disagree with the two of you. I 100% believe they intend on trying to take Western Ukraine. I think that they want to have a revolution in what's the other country? Moldova. And in order to do that, they're going to have to connect those two pieces. So they're going to have to
Transnistria, I mean?
Yeah, Transnistria. Right.
Oh.
Yeah. So I think they're going to try to start something there, and in order for them to do that, they're going to have to push further west. And I think one of the problems is because of the way Putin gained power and because of the popularity of his annexation of Crimea, the unpopularity of this combined with any kind of loss is in Russia, they don't have like peaceful transfers of power. I mean, I know between Yeltsin and Putin they did, but I think he's in a way fighting for his life. And so because of that, I think they can't quit. They can't stop fighting, no matter to the point where it gets irrational. I think they can't. And the other problem, what I said before, is while you're saying that they have a personnel problem in Ukraine, on the Russian side, they have a materiel problem because China is no longer going to supply them with stuff. Now, they can still get artillery shells from Iran. I think South Africa, there's a couple other countries that can give them the artillery shells. But the problem is, like I said before, this is going to be a serious, serious problem. And I think the ultimate ending of this thing is going to be the end of the Putin administration.